Love it. Which you went and saw Lewis, Martin. How did that go?
It was good, actually. So we did a couple of features with him. We'll play out through the year on Sky F1. A qualifying masterclass I wanted to do with him. He was very generous, but a bit grumpy, actually. I thought generally. And it's interesting that his right-hand man, Mark Hines, is no longer working with him. And I sensed he possibly wasn't super happy with the way the negotiations have worked out at Mercedes-Benz. So once we got over that, I did say to him, look, you're going to burst through 100 poles this year at some point, most likely. And he goes, why? McLaren were a quarter of a second behind us in Abu Dhabi. Now they've got our engine. And what about Red Bull? Maybe the high rate works, and don't count out Ferrari. And, the Aston Martin will be strong. And he sort of really challenged me quite hard. And I said, well, you have got 98 of them, mostly in the hybrid era, Lewis. And you scored 10 last year. There's a half a chance you'll get 2 more this year. But when we got over that little hurdle, because Lewis does love to poke you a little bit before you sit down to do stuff like that. I had an hour with him talking about that amazing race in Istanbul last year where he took his 7th world title. And as I said, he was very generous on sort of inside his head, inside his life of a Grand Prix weekend and how qualifying unfolds.
In a recent feature done by Sky Sports F1, Martin Brundle talked about his recent interaction with Lewis Hamilton and the fact that to him, Hamilton looked a bit grumpy about how the contract talks had unraveled with Mercedes. He also talked about how Hamilton didn't seem that confident about prospects of Mercedes continuing to be competitive this season. Something like this should raise alarms if you are a Mercedes or a Lewis Hamilton fan, because what this means is that there are clearly some chinks in the armor that are starting to develop at Mercedes. It was slightly strange to see how the contract talks had unraveled between Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. It wasn't until February of this year, with just few weeks left before the start of the season, that Mercedes announced an extension of the contract for Hamilton. Even when the extension was announced, the fact that it was only for 1 year caught everyone by surprise. Surely, after a lengthy negotiation period, Mercedes and Hamilton might have reached an agreement to sign a multi-year deal. But with a single-year extension, it became clear that the driver and the team had probably still not reached an agreement. With the paucity of time, both parties had agreed to put off the discussion for later in the year. Now, in my view, the delay could have been either on the side of Mercedes or even on the side of Hamilton as well. Mercedes, on their part, would be looking at the future. With Hamilton already 36, it won't be long before he calls time on his career. And it also won't be long before drivers like Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc start taking over from him in terms of performance on the track. Mercedes, at this stage of Hamilton's career, might be looking at either grooming a George Russell by Hamilton's side or looking at a change of guard altogether by bringing in a Max Verstappen or a Charles Leclerc. The other factor could be the salary that Hamilton commands. A salary that is by far the most any team pays to its driver on the grid. With budget caps on the horizon and with world economy at a very delicate stage right now, Mercedes would be finding it hard to pay Hamilton the big bucks that he commands. On the other side, Lewis Hamilton too might not be interested in sticking around in Formula 1 for far too long. He's already achieved more than what any driver in history has been able to achieve. The 8th title triumph that will make him the most accomplished driver in the history of Formula 1 can be achieved this season, where Mercedes is yet again expected to have the best car in the grid. Also, there might be a case where Lewis Hamilton knows something that we don't about the future competitiveness of the Mercedes. Maybe he has seen something that we haven't that makes him believe that Mercedes might not be the same force it is right now, and hence it doesn't make sense to sign a long-term contract with the team in that case. Even in his interaction with Martin Brundle, he called out Brundle's assessment of Mercedes being a favorite this season, by pointing out some valid arguments that Mercedes was just a quarter of a second quicker than McLaren at the last race of the 2020 season. It's slightly uncharacteristic for the teams and the drivers to delay the contract extensions to the extent Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton did earlier this year. There were question marks already on whether everything was fine between Mercedes and Hamilton when only a single year extension was signed by Hamilton. These revelations made by Martin Brundle about Hamilton being grumpy about the contract talks do make you think whether there is a wrinkle or two starting to develop between the relationship of Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. Either way, it makes for a great storyline before the season kicks off in Bahrain at the end of March. Now, these were my views. What do you guys think? Are we starting to see cracks appear in the marriage of Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes? There is no smoke without fire, and something is surely going on behind the curtains. Do let me know in the comment section. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.